Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Chris with InsideTheU. Thanks for stopping by for another video, breaking down two coaches currently at the mid-major level. The last video I did was focusing on three coaches at the low major level, but with this one, I'm going to shorten it up a little bit, focus on just these two coaches who also have experience at the high major level. And we're going to focus on UAB's Andy Kennedy, as well as New Mexico's Richard Pitino. I'll get into that. I want to focus on them and also look at another ACC situation, somewhat similar, where it didn't work out with Jeff Capel at Oklahoma. He was at that high major level, then he goes to be an assistant, and then right now he's at Pittsburgh. So it is a precedent in the ACC with a coach that didn't work out at their high major opportunity like Kennedy and Pitino, which I'm going to break down and get into those two coaches in a little bit. But also, I want to just mention a little bit real quick about the coaching salary. Look, in 2024, USA Today put out their coaching salary report, and Jim Larrañaga at that point was making $2.7 million, which ranks seventh highest in the ACC. So keep that number in mind. However, the next coach might not make that much. Maybe it's going to be closer to that $2 million range, and some coaches at that point were making under $2 million. But I just think roughly, I think that's kind of the salary to be looking at. And right now, just with Pitino and Kennedy, their situations right now, Kennedy and both of these guys have signed extensions through 2029 at their respective schools because of the success that they've had. Kennedy right now at 1.1 million and Pitino at 1.2, but both of them are making right around that $2 million salary at their previous schools when Kennedy was at Ole Miss and Pitino was at Minnesota. So again, just keep that in mind. And also other coaches who could potentially fit into Miami's salary structure in the ACC and what to expect there. So with Andy Kennedy, he's in year 5 at UAB, his alma mater, which to me is a big factor in all of this and determining if he's going to leave UAB. I've talked about this before with other coaching candidates, and I do think it's worth noting because he might just be settled in there at UAB. He was a Hall of Fame player there, and he's got this program going. So in his previous 4 years, they've averaged 25 wins in each season. Really impressive performances as he's made their transition from Conference USA into that American Athletic Conference, and did a great job last season and this year. The game I watched, played against Memphis, lost 100-77, dropped to 12-8 on the season, 5-2 in the conference. But I still think that they're going to have a good season. Maybe not as good as last year's team or the year before, but again, just a team that's really impressive with what they've been able to do. And even at 5-2, 12-8 overall, and they had some tough losses throughout the season, they're second right now in the conference in offensive efficiency. I think that's worth noting because he does have a good offensive system, and what he's been able to do throughout his career. It's not just what he's done this year. Again, UAB might not have that season that these other coaches are having. Maybe they are going to take a little bit of step back, but I don't think that is going to really portray everything that he is as a coach. Just something to keep in mind. He's been highly successful wherever he's been. When he was at Ole Miss, he was there for 12 years, and it didn't end well, but he had that losing season, just a 5-13 record in conference. And there were some conflicts on whether he actually did resign, which was the public, the official announcement. But was he forced out? There's something that goes into that as well. But at Ole Miss, he's the school's all-time leading winningest coach there. His first 11 seasons were all winning seasons, and that was coming off 4 losing years at Ole Miss. So definitely, he knows how to win games. Over his career, he's won 71% of his games as a head coach. Also was an interim head coach at Cincinnati for 1 season, and he's just won wherever he's been. And just sticking with the Ole Miss situation, he won a bunch of games, was very consistent there. He didn't dip below. Other than that last season, their worst in-conference record was 7-9, which obviously is very good considering if that is your lowest point. And then obviously he had some good seasons there, took the Rebels to 2 NCAA tournaments, and they won 27 games once there in 2013. So he did win a bunch of games at Ole Miss, a program that doesn't always have a lot of winning. I will say, though, he did produce some good players, but I know that one of the things to keep in mind was the NBA level players just weren't there. He had 1 player drafted during his time, and then he only had 1 player, a different player, an undrafted player, make it to the NBA, actually play in the NBA. So I think that's something noteworthy. But one of the things, and just kind of researching Kennedy, whether it's at Ole Miss, whether it's at UAB right now, he's a guy that's really excelled with the junior college level, really understands, trying to identify, great pieces, players that work out. And then also he's one of these guys that's really embraces a transfer portal. So I think if he were to be the coach at Miami, I think that's something that you would definitely see. I think he'd really embrace it, knows what to look for, different spots, whether, whatever it might be at the front court level or even at the guard position. So I just think that's something noteworthy as a guy that really understands. And even at UAB, he gets there immediately and does well. 22-7 his first season, 13-5 in conference in year one at UAB. So he has shown it doesn't take long, regardless of the player turnover or whatever it might be. He knows how to win games immediately, just like he did at Ole Miss with those 4 losing seasons coming into it. And then his first year at Ole Miss goes 21-13, 8-8 in the conference. Certainly when you watch UAB basketball, there's one player that stands out, and because of the new ruling in December with junior college players, Yaxel Lindeberg would actually have a year of eligibility remaining. He spent 2 years at the JUCO level. As I mentioned, Kennedy has excelled and his staff has excelled at getting junior college players. And Lindeberg is actually listed as a senior, year 2 at UAB. And he's a guy that would have that extra year of eligibility based on the ruling. They're trying to give players that currently that we're going to run out of eligibility would give them that extra year. So the way I look at it, a 6'9" forward in Lindeberg is one of those guys that's just been really impressive throughout the country, not just right now in the American, but he's one of only 2 players that leads his team in scoring, rebounding, assists, steals, and blocks. The other player you guys are all really familiar with, and that's Duke's Cooper Flagg. Obviously, Yaxel's not that level of a player, but it just shows his impact. A 6'9" forward, one of these under-the-radar guys that Coach Kennedy and his staff has really gotten the most out of. And he certainly was impressive against Memphis. Although Memphis, ran away with the game, Memphis is a team that I think is a very good team. And UAB has struggled just over their history against Memphis. But I just think Memphis has a really good team. I don't put that loss... I don't take a lot away from that in terms of Kennedy and his team and his coaching and anything like that. I just think Memphis is really good. Certainly the 100 points is way too many in a college level game. You don't want that. But overall, I still think there were things when I watched that game that stood out to me. And Yaxel's, I think he could certainly make that transition to the ACC if Kennedy were to come and if he were to want to follow. So that's just something to keep in mind. Again, when you watch UAB basketball, you got to watch him because he's certainly an impressive player. And then New Mexico's Richard Pitino, who guided his team to a 75-73 win at UNLV, a program that New Mexico has really struggled against. 1-10 in their last 11 against UNLV. Pitino had been 1-4 against UNLV. So they get the win, improved to 17-4, 9-1 in the Mountain West. And if you've watched the last video, I did mention Richard Pitino. And to me, he was a guy I didn't think would be a great fit at Miami because of how things worked out at Minnesota. He was there 8 years, got fired after the 8th season. And during that time at Minnesota, he only led the Gophers to a top 10 finish 3 times, top 10 in the Big Ten there. So he just wasn't able to win enough games. But the reason why I mention him here is because at New Mexico, and maybe this is just one of those things where he is going to be evaluated differently now. Maybe this is a coach who's only 42 years old right now. He was 30 years old when he got the head coaching job at FIU, was only at FIU 1 year, won 18 games, and then he went on to Minnesota and now at New Mexico. But it is worth noting at New Mexico, I mentioned 17-4 this year. They have a really good team. I enjoyed watching them play, and there's some interesting things that stood out to me with that. But just his track at New Mexico started off 13-19. That was his first season. And this is a program, if you're not familiar with New Mexico and the Mountain West, a great venue, great home fan base as well. So this is a good program that's well known, and that'll be something that he'll have to decide. Again, he's a guy that has signed an extension there, and maybe he just really enjoys how things are going there at New Mexico. So 13-19, and his wins kept going up each year. 22-12 in year 2, 26-10 last year. And he takes the Lobos there to the NCAA tournament. And then 17-4 this year. Looks like they could win even more than 26 games that they did a year ago. So maybe he's a guy that's just figured it out, got that experience, learned what it's taken. And then maybe if he does get that next opportunity, goes back to that Power 5 conference program, a high major program, and he's able to take all the things he learned, what didn't work out well at Minnesota, combine that what's worked out well at New Mexico, and take that moving forward to his next opportunity if he were to get one. So when watching New Mexico play and Pitino's team play, one of the things that stands out to me, and you can look at the metrics, he's one of these guys that really has a high-paced offense. You know, they're one of the highest tempo teams in the country, really short on average possession length. And they've also has an improved defense this year, so that's good to see. But what's interesting about it, they've had really good guard play, and they do again this year, which I will touch on. But even with that high pace, this isn't a team that focuses on shooting a bunch of three-pointers. They actually are one of these teams that likes to have a lot of paint touches, these post-up opportunities, one of the most in the Mountain West Conference. So I really like that with that balance, being able to score inside, that's a point of emphasis, playing at a fun, high-paced tempo, a great brand of basketball, but also having really good guards. And certainly they have that this year with what they have in the backcourt, which I'll mention in a little bit. But also before, last year, Jamal Mashburn Jr., Jalen House, with what he had with those guards, he's excelled with that. Even at Minnesota, I really like Nate Mason as a player when he had him. He coached Amir Coffey as well, currently in the NBA. So although he didn't win as many games as he needed to at Minnesota, and certainly you want him to be more consistent and also, take a program, get into the top half of the conference. And those 5 seasons ranked outside the top 10 in the conference certainly wasn't good enough. And that's ultimately what did him in at Minnesota there. But he did take him to a couple NCAA tournaments. And now he has New Mexico really rolling with its style of play and winning. And again, this is a guy that's 42 years old with a lot of experience being a head coach. You just don't see this very often. And I understand that this guy is someone that I think fans would be able to get behind, as well as these other guys. But because of the name recognition, I do understand that there will be a lot of interest in him. Also, I think that New Mexico has one of these teams that could really get hot in the NCAA tournament, could be a potential Sweet 16 team, and could be one of these guys that really elevates his status with the program, with his name, and maybe get that next opportunity. Just something to keep in mind with him and how he's done. So I touched on the backcourt at New Mexico. There's 2 guys that stand out, in particular, Donovan Dent, a highly impressive player, a junior averaging 19.6 points per game, 6.6 assists. He's a junior, a 6'2" junior who I think would make a great transition to the ACC. Again, if Pitino were to be the next coach at Miami, I think Donovan Dent would certainly be a great addition to the program as well if he wanted to follow Pitino. But he stayed at New Mexico. This is year 3 for him at New Mexico. And I think he's going to be a guy that would certainly be coveted by a lot of programs if he were decided to enter the transfer portal. In the game against UNLV, he scored 34 points. He's a guy that drives to the basket a lot, really, gets to his mid-range, and he was praised for his ability to score through contact. Not a guy that gets a lot of three-point attempts, although he's shooting at a high percent. He's just one of these guys that likes to operate, going to the basket, and then hitting some mid-range shots. A highly impressive player that was certainly fun to watch, and his consistency has been great this year. Coming into the game against UNLV, he had scored at least 10 points and had 4 assists in every single game this year. It really shows his consistency to be productive. And he only had 2 assists, but I'm sure Coach Pitino would take that performance with 34 points and just the 2 assists in the win. So he was huge. He had a huge first half, big in the second half, had a couple free throws late on a big drive late in the game that really helped New Mexico get that rare win at UNLV. So a highly impressive player, certainly a guy that I think Miami should definitely keep in mind and in terms of a potential connection with Pitino. And then the other guard alongside Dent is True Washington there in the backcourt, another guy that would be, to me, a transfer portal candidate. He's a sophomore. He's a former top 100 recruit. He's actually the highest rated recruit at New Mexico in a decade. And with Washington, a lot different of a player than Dent, and he's a very complementary piece to Dent. And he plays both ends of the floor. He's a guy that's known for his defensive abilities, deflecting passes, getting steals, also has a good defensive rating, and that stood out to me against UNLV. The other thing is he did have 9 points in the game, but when he does score, and he kind of picks his spots in different ways, but New Mexico is really good when he scores in double figures. 11-0 this season, 19-1 over the last 2 seasons when Washington scores double figures. So when he does get some points, he's a nice player, a nice addition to the program in terms of helping the team win games. And that stood out to me as a guy that doesn't demand a lot of shot opportunities, but he is averaging 10 points a game this season. A guy that, again, a really good complementary piece, and a guy that I think also could make that transition to the ACC if he were to get that opportunity. Again, this is all essentially based on if Pitino were to get it, because I think whoever is the next head coach at Miami, I think it's only natural with as many options as Miami will have on its roster. I think there'll be a lot of openings. I think without question, whoever is the next head coach at Miami, I think you're going to see a potential of those players coming in and joining the program as well. I think it's only natural to look at that. So again, Kennedy and Pitino, unique situations with where they were at before and where they're at now. Maybe they're both on the rise again. They're kind of reviving their careers in a way when it didn't work out at the high major level at the end. But both of them did have some success, and then the success that they're having now, I think it should put both of these guys on the radar for Miami's athletic department and athletic director Dan Radakovich. So definitely let me know what you think about these two guys. Who would you like me to focus on? The next video I'm going to focus on is a little bit of the lateral move. Maybe even the Micah Shrewsbury situation at Notre Dame coming over from Penn State, or even Andy Infeld. So I'm going to focus on that. Some guys maybe at other conferences that maybe could be looking for essentially a lateral type of move into the ACC at Miami. But thanks for watching the video. Appreciate your support. Have a good weekend. Drop in the comments below. Do you like these two? Do you like one more than the other? Or would you like them to go a different route? Thanks for watching, and take care.